Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about monetizing digital goods with Google Wallet. I'm Pali, a product manager on the Google Wallet team, and I'm going to be joined today by Dan and Joel, who are software engineers on the team, and Brian, who's with Kabam, a partner of Google Wallet. So I'm going to start off today by talking a little bit about Google Wallet for digital goods and how it will help developers monetize their digital goods. Then we're going to hand off to Dan and Joel here to talk about the integration process for Google Wallet. And we'll turn over to Brian to talk about their experience with integrating with Google Wallet and the experience they've had with monetizing their digital goods. And want to wrap up with some exciting news. So if you stick around to the end, there's some exciting news coming up. So first up, I want to just level set everybody on Google Wallet. How many of you have used Google Wallet before? Show of hands. Wow, everybody. Well, it was a little bit of a trick question because the only way to purchase tickets for I/O was by using Google Wallet. So you wouldn't be here if you hadn't used Google Wallet already. In addition, we've got some great booths set up if you want to try out Tap and Pay. So do come by our booth, and we've got a code lab set up if you want to try out and actually do an integration. So Google Wallet is just your physical wallet that we put in the cloud, so it's accessible from any device, whether it's your desktop computer or your mobile device, so you have it on the go. Now, Google Wallet for digital goods is the same Google Wallet, all the benefits we talked about, but optimized for digital content. When we announced this product last year, we'd called it InApp Payments. And since we launched, we've learned that developers are using this for a whole lot more than just in-app payments. So they're using it to monetize all kinds of digital content, whether it's virtual swords within a game, or whether it's music, videos, online articles, etc. So Google Wallet is really for the gamut of all of the digital content that developers are looking to monetize. And the beautiful thing about Google Wallet is that it already powers all of Google. So if you look at the technology behind payments for Google Play, Offers, YouTube, Google Plus Games, Chrome Web Store, all of this is powered by Google Wallet. And so developers get access to the huge technology investments that we put in to make this the very best product in terms of conversions, in terms of monetization for all the Google properties. And you guys have access to it with Google Wallet for digital goods. After we've launched, a whole lot of great developers have already onboarded onto Google Wallet. We're going to be joined by one of them, Kabam, to talk about their experience. But we also have all of the large brands like Zynga, Grovio, Gameloft, EA, etc., already integrated with Google Wallet. So there's a ton of momentum, and there's already hundreds of developers on Google Wallet. And with today's announcements, we're looking to scale this much, much more. Now, when we started Google Wallet, we looked at three key principles. And the first principle was really to have a streamlined experience. We wanted to make it as simple to buy with Google Wallet as it is to click a button on the screen. And if you look at signed-in users today with Google Wallet, that's all it takes. And we're going to demonstrate a little bit of that purchase experience here, but it's just one click and you're done. The second key principle we wanted to start off with was make it really simple to integrate with this product. And we're going to hit upon this theme a lot more during the rest of this session. And a big point that we've actually focused on, and a point of focus we've had throughout this process of launching Google Wallet for digital goods is to make the integration very, very simple. In many cases, developers have told us that it takes just a couple of hours to integrate. And we'll demonstrate some of that as well. And the last one was, of course, attractive pricing. We want to make sure that we increase developer bottom lines as much as possible, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as well. Now, since we've launched last year at Google I/O, we've been hard at work. So we've done a bunch of different things. The first, of course, is that in July and August, we launched support for Chrome Web Store and Google Plus Games developers. So anyone on the Chrome Web Store or Google Plus Games can use Google Wallet to monetize their digital content. And then in the fall, we streamlined the user experience to this one-step process that I just described. In December of last year, we expanded support from the United States to 18 seller countries. So if you're developers in any of these seller countries, you can start using Google Wallet for digital goods right away. And the other big win was expanding this product to 140 plus buyer countries. So you have buyers that you can target across 140 countries on the planet. And we, of course, support 9 currencies as well. Now, in January, we launched another big push with Google Wallet and making the sign-up easier. And with the new sign-up flow that we have, all we collect from a new user is, apart from your credit card details, just your name and zip code. And you can sign up, and it's that simple. And we've seen conversions go up big time after this particular launch. And then in March this year, we launched mobile web support. The nice thing about mobile web support is now, if a user actually comes to your site or your app on a mobile device, and they're using a mobile browser, we'll present to them a streamlined mobile web experience. And the cool thing about this is that you don't have to do even one bit of work for this. We'll just detect the device and automatically present the right flow, whether you're coming through your PC or you're coming on your mobile phone. And the last couple of months have been like really, really busy on our team. Dan and Joel can attest to that, because we've been hard at work on 3 cool things that we want to talk about today. And the first of them, of course, is something that we've got lots and lots of feedback on throughout the course of this launch in this last year. Developers love that we allow single item purchases to be so simple. But one of the consistent pieces of feedback that we've always got is when you're going to support subscriptions. So without further ado, as of today, we support subscriptions. The nice thing about the subscription functionality we're doing is that it's as simple to use as our single item purchase. So the user has still just this one-step process we talked about. A signed-in wallet user just has one step to subscribe to your content, right? They just click the finish button and they're done. We're going to launch with monthly subscription support, and we'll do free trials right away. And the coolest thing about this is that it's live in Sandbox. So whether it's to go by our Google Wallet desk, which is on the second floor, right on this floor here, or the Code Lab at 1:15 on Friday, you can go in and try this out. And feel free to like knock on this and go use this product because it's already live, okay? So look forward to all you developers like taking advantage of this, including those who are viewing this live stream on the web. Now, of course, once we launched subscriptions, the first question, of course, was how would we do subscription management? And how would we give merchants and developers the way to do subscription management, including canceling subscriptions when a user calls you, et cetera. And so we're doing a revamp of all our merchant services as well. And you guys will see this soon, where we're going to give you a much more streamlined interface and subscription management functionality. Pretty cool. But while we were revamping this, we figured, why don't we just go ahead and improve the analytics? So when this new functionality launches, we're going to give you enhanced analytics. So we've got all of this really rich demographic data that we're going to bring to bear, and we're going to give you analytics, whether it's by gender, by age, or country. And we'll give you like really cool graphs to show you how your sales have been trending as you introduce new digital content, new pricing to your users. And you can take advantage of that as soon as we launch this functionality. Now with that, I want to hand over to Dan and Joel to talk about what's most important to you guys, which is how easy the integration is going to be. Dan?
All right, thanks, Pali. Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm Joel.
And we're both engineers working on Google Wallet for digital goods. We'd like to talk a little bit about integration right now. So since we announced the product a year ago, not much has changed with integration. What we do, if you want to integrate with Google Wallets for digital goods, what you do is you create a JWT, or a JWT, which stands for JSON Web Token. This describes the thing that you're selling. I've got an example here on the screen. It's a data structure here that holds a description of a digital item being sold. You can see in here we've got the issuer, which is the person selling the item, the audience, which is us, Google. We've got a issued at time and an expiration date, and also a type. The type field there is important. It's just TYP. It says the type of purchase that is being made. That purchase is described in the request substructure in here. And in there you can see the name, description, price, and currency code of what's being sold, along with an optional field called seller data. Google does not interpret the seller data. We simply hold on to it and echo it back to you later once a purchase or a subscription has been completed. It's a good place to do your own record keeping. So once you've created the JWT, basically once you've created that data structure and run it through a JWT library that will actually JSON encode it, or JSON encode it and base64 encode it and sign it with your secret key, then you need to pass it into our JavaScript library. We've tried to keep this very simple as well. What you would typically do here is put your own buy button on your page, bind the buy button to a click handler. In this case, we've called it purchase. And in that purchase function, this is just a JavaScript function, you can pass the JWT into our JavaScript buy call. Along with the JWT, you can provide a success and failure callback. These, again, are just JavaScript functions, and they get called when somebody exits the buy flow. Now, with subscriptions, it's really, really similar. So if you've already integrated for items, doing it for subscriptions should be pretty straightforward. I've highlighted the changes in yellow. The JWT structure is slightly different. Instead of being for an item in that type field, it's for a subscription instead. And the contents of the request substructure are slightly different as well. Instead of having the price and currency code right there in the request, we've got another structure inside of there that we call recurrence. And in there, we've got price, currency code, and frequency. So you can see in this example, we're charging $4.99 a month USD.
Yeah, so wait a second, Dan.
What, Joel?
We have an audience full of developers out here.
We do.
So let's just do the live integration right here on stage.
A live demo.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, do you have any site in mind that you might want to integrate with?
I do, actually. You know my dogs, right?
Oh, yeah, I love your dogs.
Yeah, so I have two dogs, Pepper and Nutmeg. They're pugs. And I've written a blog about them. So,
oh, cool.
So why don't we just integrate subscriptions right into my blog?
Sounds like a great idea. So before we get started, I want to go through the basic steps we're going to do to integrate with your blog. We're going to first add a buy button to your blog. It's a button somebody can click on to subscribe. And then we're going to go through building a JWT on your server. And then we're going to take that JWT and pass it into our JavaScript buy function. And then finally, the last step is that we're going to handle the post back. And this is the server-to-server call that Google makes back to your server once a payment has been completed, whether it be a subscription or a purchase, or a single item purchase.
Okay, sounds good. So why don't we start off by taking a look at my blog?
Yeah, let's do that.
So there you see it. There's my pugs, Pepper and Nutmeg.
Nice.
And some very, very rich content on here.
Very nice.
But I'd like to make some money off of this.
Sounds good.
So let's walk through integrating subscriptions then.
That sounds good. So Joel, just to make sure you've done some prep work here, have you already created a subscriptions database table on your data store to keep track of who's subscribed and who isn't?
Yeah, I've got that all set up.
Okay, great. So the first step that we want to do here is adding a buy button to your page. So let's actually go into your server code here and read the state of a user to see if they're subscribed or not, and then pass that into our web template so we can show the appropriate messaging. And what we're going to want to do is show some different messaging for people that are subscribed versus unsubscribed.
Okay, so right now what I've got is, you'll notice on line 36, I'm reading from my data store, passing in the email to figure out whether or not this user has subscribed. Later down on line 40, I'm just passing it into this template values data structure, which then propagates into the actual template. So I'm going to open up the template now, and I'm just going to make sure this premium content that you see on line 10 gets hidden behind that has subscribe flag.
That sounds great. So again, we're showing people who haven't subscribed a subscribe button, and people who have subscribed get the premium content.
Yeah, so now I've got the premium content tucked in behind the if statement that you see on line 9. So So if they have subscribed, they're going to see this premium content. And I'm a grateful guy, so I'm going to thank you for your support.
That's very nice.
And if they haven't subscribed, you'll notice the else statement on 14. And if they haven't subscribed, I'm just going to throw a subscribe button on the page. And I'm actually hooking it up to a purchase.js function right now. But we'll get into implement that later.
Let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay, we're going to reload the page.
All right, I see the subscribe button.
All right, exactly as expected. Nobody has subscribed yet, including yourself, so we're just showing a subscribe button. So let's move on to the next step. Let's actually create the jot. So Joel, if you could open up the server code. I see you've done that. So the next step is to create that Python data structure that describes the purchase. Just like I showed on the slide a few slides earlier, we're going to create that data structure, pass it into a jot library, and I should have mentioned earlier, these are available across a number of programming languages. We're going to pass it in there, which is going to turn it into JSON and base64 encode it and sign it with your secret key.
Yeah, so just going back up, you'll notice what I've done here is I've pasted in the jot payload. That's the structure that you saw a few slides ago. In here, you'll notice the issuer. You'll notice I have seller ID. That's just a constant I've stored in another file for now. I pulled out my seller ID from the Merchant Center, as well as I've got my seller secret stored in a constant as well in that same file. Both of those pieces of information are right off the Merchant Center. You'll notice the type field. That looks familiar to the single item jot, other than now we have subscription in there. And as Dan referenced earlier, we have this recurrent structure inside of the request. One other thing to note is if you look at line 47 here, I'm just putting in the user's email. I'm going to be using this later to determine whether or not the user has subscribed. And then I pass it into the jot library, and I call encode on it. Basically, this will base64 encode the jot payload and then sign that structure. And now what I'm going to do, just so we can see some progress, I'm going to put it into the template so we can see that it's actually generating a jot.
Now, you normally wouldn't show this to your customers. It does just look like gibberish, but it is base64 encoded JSON. And in fact, if you ran it through a base64 decoder, you would see the original data in there.
Yeah. One other thing to note, this subscribe button still does not work.
OK, so let's move on to the next step here, the third step. Let's actually take that jot and pass it into the buy function from the Google Wallet for Digital Goods JavaScript library. This will actually bring up the buy flow and allow somebody to subscribe.
OK, so let me go back up so we can see this. Oh. Sorry about that. So what you're seeing on line 7 is us loading up the Google Wallet library. One thing to point out here on line 10, we're pointing it at the Sandbox configuration. This from line 7 to line 12 is all copy-paste right off our dev docs. And then just below that, I've implemented the purchase call that I said I would implement later. In here, you'll notice all I'm doing is calling the buy function. And that buy function is supplied by the library loaded above. In there, I'm just passing the jot that we generated on the server side, and I'm just setting up a success handler here. I left the failure handler off just for this demo. And all the success handler is going to do, as you can see on line 19, is it's just going to reload the page. And I'm going to leverage the postbacks to actually figure out whether or not the user has subscribed.
So let's take a look and see what this looks like right now that we've got all that code written. OK, so we actually have a mostly working buy flow at this point. We're actually able to launch the payment dialog. You can see we're charging $4.99 a month. We're getting really close right now. The thing that we have not done yet, though, is actually recorded anywhere in our code that somebody has subscribed. So what we've got to do is the last step, which is implementing the postback handler. So when a purchase completes, whether it's a single item purchase, the traditional API that we've had for a year now, or a subscription, Google is going to send your server a server-to-server postback to the URL that you've defined in your integration settings page. So Joel, if you could open up your server code and go ahead and write that. Looks like you've got that done.
Quick type.
Great, very fast.
So just to explain what's happening here, Google will do a post to your server when a purchase completes. It's going to post to a URL that you've specified in the Merchant Center. And what it does is it posts a request to your server with a job parameter. So what I'm doing here is I'm extracting that job parameter out of the request, and then I'm passing it through that same JOT library. But instead of encoding it this time, I'm actually going to decode it. And what decoding will do, it will base64 decode the JOT payload, and it'll also verify that the signature is correct. So if we get past this point, we have a decoded JOT. And the next thing I recommend doing is making sure that this JOT was actually meant for you. To do this, all you have to do is check that the issuer is from Google and that the audience is your seller ID. If all is good at this point, what I'm doing here is I'm just pulling out the order ID more for record keeping, and I'm extracting that email that I had put in the seller data. And I'm going to then store this in my data store so I can tell when a user comes back whether or not they've subscribed. And on line 78, this is an important point here. On line 78, what we're going to do is we're going to echo the order ID back out down in the response so Google knows that we've completed processing this request.
So that's all there is to it, really. We've tried to keep the implementation or the integration very straightforward. So we should have something that's working right now, but there's one problem that we haven't addressed yet. And the problem that we haven't addressed is that we've been doing all of this on Joel's laptop, and that's on the Google I/O network, and the server-to-server call won't work from here. To fix this, we'll have to push to App Engine.
Yep, but in interest of time, I actually pushed this exact code just a couple hours ago. So I'm just going to go hit my App Engine instance. You'll notice the content looks exactly the same as my local host. I'm going to click on the subscribe button. This is going to pop up the Google Wallet payment dialog. One thing you'll notice is still, pay to Pug Lover. Just below that, you'll see my list of credit cards. You'll notice I have one expired. And I'm just going to complete this purchase with my Amex. And there we go. Purchase went through, or subscription went through, actually.
Okay, so now your JavaScript success handler is called, the page is reloaded.
And there it is. Thank you for your support.
So to recap here, we've went through 4 steps to do this integration. We added a buy button to Joel's page. We built a JOT on the server. We passed the JOT into the JavaScript function that the library provides. And then we wrote a postback handler. So we've been trying to keep this really straightforward, try to make it as simple as possible, but don't just take our word for it. We've got Brian from Kabam here, who's done an integration with us, and he'd like to tell you more. Welcome, Brian.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. I'm Brian Schwab, and I lead the payments team at Kabam. And really happy to be here today. This is my first Google I/O. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is a little bit about what we do, and how we've integrated Google Wallet into our games. Developers about integration, as well as some tips for monetization. Kabam is one of the leaders in social games. We make games specifically for hardcore gamers. Some of our top games are Dragons of Atlantis, Kingdoms of Camelot, The Godfather, 5 Families, Thirst of Night, Edgeworld, and others. The Godfather was our first game that we partnered with a major movie studio. And this game was really important for us because it was the first game that we launched exclusively on Google+. This game was on no other social platform at the time. We also included it in the Google Chrome store as well. And we were really happy with this integration, and Google was really great about helping us with any problems that we had ironing out and making sure that we got this launched on time. So it was a really positive experience. Now I want to get into a few tips to help you with your integration. First off, you should definitely read through all the documentation, play with the sample code before you even start coding. Really understand that whole flow and how it works in your mind. Break down the front end and back end and how it works. For our team, this is really helpful because once you understand the whole situation or how the platform works, you can really break down the tasks in the sprint and assign it to different developers and bring it together later. Next, the JOT is very important. So make sure that you use the libraries that are provided. There's libraries provided for multiple different programming languages. Bring those into your project and use it. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Especially because JOT errors can cause problems in the transaction. It won't work. So you don't want that at all. Another thing you want to do is create a unit test such that when you generate your jot code, you check it with what's provided in the sample code. You want to make sure those match up so you know and you're pretty sure that everything works correctly. For us, we had a problem when we were first working with this code that the jot wasn't generating correctly. So we drilled down to the specific class where it was happening, and we fixed the problem. But then we followed it up by writing a unit test and making sure that that unit test always checked that code to make sure it was working. And then we never had that problem anymore. Next, the sandbox. The sandbox is very helpful. Really, this is the first time where your front end and back end are going to come together, and you're really going to be testing them as one unit. This is also the first time, as you've seen earlier, how you're going to get real data into your postback handler. So this is important to test and make sure that the postback handler is handling the transaction correctly, and you're seeing the output of everything in the database, and everything looks great. Another good thing about this is that in the sandbox, you have test credit cards. I was going to give out Pali's credit card number today, but I'm sure he wouldn't like that. So send it out to a wider audience in your team and have everybody bang on it and make sure if you find out any issues, you can address it there in the sandbox before you go live. For us, this was great when we were on the road to finishing up Godfather. We were testing in the sandbox. We had a tight iteration loop. And then it was really great to just flip the switch and go from sandbox to production. It was very easy. So take advantage of that resource. One of our top games is Edgeworld. And we make games for hardcore gamers. Our games involve strategy, action, combat, teamwork. Edgeworld is a game where it immerses players in an epic battle to take over this abandoned alien world. And so what I'd like to do is jump into the game right now and show you how our Google Wallet integration looks. Let's see. Okay. So here's my online base. And I've built up my troops, and I think I'm pretty powerful, so I'm going to go and attack somebody. Find a base that I've been trying to attack for a while now, and send out some troops and see if I can win this time. As we load the base, wow, let me pull up the word gate, select some units. I'll send this particular unit in along with a few of these, send them into battle. Now I can kind of tell offhand that that probably doesn't look very good. Doesn't look like I'm strong enough. But in my head, I thought I was powerful enough, but I guess that's not going to happen. Yeah. Yeah, the black there, that's me. So I'm dead. So I'm going to leave that base and pretend that never happened. And you know, I really need to get some more powerful units, and our in-game currency here is platinum. So, you know, I'm going to go in and get a little bit more platinum so I can train my troops. And I'm just going to select one of the payment options here. And the cool thing about this is now with the Streamlined experience, I didn't have to log in or do anything. So I'm really happy about that change. And earlier today, I actually signed up for this amazing pug blog. So I already have my credit card in here. So let me select that credit card, hit finish. Hopefully we go through, hit OK, and then back to the game. So as you can see, those new changes really made it pretty simple. Like my time spent in paying was pretty small, which is great. So another thing I want to talk about is best practices for monetization. What you should do in your game is create a price matrix of all of your in-game currency versus some of the major currencies out there, not just USD, but British pounds, euros. Then you want to geolocate your users. You want to find out where they're coming from into your game. There's plenty of libraries out there that you can import into your project. There's free databases to help with this. Once you have that, what you want to do is hit them with a combination of finding out where they're coming from and then present them with the language that's native to them as well as the currency. Now, this is important for your conversion because users are used to thinking in their own currency, calculating worth, as well as reading the language. As you can see here, we have an example of a user coming in from Europe. In the code, we've detected they've come from Germany, so we've served up the language as German, as well as provided them the options to purchase in euros. Next, you want to think about scaling your bonus items, if you have bonus items. We provide bonus items as part of the package of buying in-game currency. And so what's key here is to not just do a one-to-one of price point to in-game currency to bonus items. You want to scale those bonus items up to make those higher price points attractive. And lastly is gifting. Gifting was really successful for us. As you can see in this type of game, it's really hard to become powerful. And as you invite your friends, they usually start in a level where they're not powerful at all. So in order for everybody to have fun, what happens is their friends will gift them items so that they can get up to a higher level of power. And everybody has a great time at that point, so it's really helpful. And lastly, I want to leave you with a few more tips when you're working with Google Wallet. First is make your postbacks idempotent. This is important because you want to be able to send the transactions over and over again, have the code check for duplicates. Where this helped us out was we had a problem one time where there was a timeout in the database. So we were able to just resend that transaction again, the database was up and it went through. Another place where this helps you out is if you have a huge list of test transactions. And what you can do with that is you can just send them at your postback and really slam it and make sure that the load and performance is there and looks good before you go live. Next is you want to track everything about payments. Cannot stress this enough. Anytime someone is in your payments flow, in the funnel, you want to track everything that they do to find out where they drop off. This is also important when you're doing A/B testing. When you have a hypothesis, you want to make sure that you can determine which one is the successful one. So record everything. There's a lot of variables going on here, IP addresses, what they've chosen as their price point, what the currency that was served, everything that comes in with the postback, just record everything. And lastly, think about other countries outside of the US. The easy ones to pick off right away are Canada, Australia, and UK. But also think about FIGs, which is France, Italy, Germany, and Spain. And the cool thing about Google Wallet is you can just have your USD bank account. Google Wallet will take care of all the translation of all those currencies into yours. So thank you, everybody. I hope these tips will help you. I really enjoyed being here today, and hopefully this will help you with your integration. As you can see from the final result, the new Streamlined purchase flow is very nice, and hopefully it'll also help you with your monetization. And for some really exciting news about Google Wallet, here's Pali.
Thanks, Brian. You know, I guess we put this slide together before we saw Sergey's skydiver stunt. So there's a new bar for exciting at this year's Google I/O, but I think this will still be like really, really interesting to you guys. So last year when we announced the pricing for in-app payments, it was huge. It was 5% flat for all your transactions. And that was a great rate for developers. And we've been getting amazing feedback about this rate from developers who integrated with us and developers who are looking to integrate with us. One of the things that we've always been trying to do is figure out how we can make it better for developers. And as some of our developers have gotten traction, like Kabam and others, they've started to create these price matrices where they give different levels of buy-in to the players of their game in Kabam's case. And they have like goods that they're selling everywhere from $1 to $5, all the way up to transactions that are $300 at a time. And of course, the feedback we get is that 5% is like awesome when you do a $1 transaction, because all Google Wallet takes from you is 5 cents. But it could be better for larger transactions, right? So if it's a $100 transaction or a $300 transaction, how do we make it better for developers? And the usual approach that all of the solutions in the market take is that they create a microtransaction rate This is like the 5% rate we have, which is really awesome. And then they create another rate, which is for larger transactions or regular transactions. And those transactions, that rate usually is tiered along different like volume structures. So if you're higher volume, you get a lower rate. It's all sorts of confusing tier structures. In fact, you probably need a degree to figure out how this pricing works. And they usually have long FAQ documents. That's usually the first sign that this pricing is like super complicated. So what we did was try to simplify it all and try to figure out how we can make it better for both microtransactions and large transactions and just have one price structure that works for everybody. So today, we want to announce a new rate, and that's 5% or 1.9% plus 30 cents. I'll repeat that. It's 5% or 1.9% plus 30 cents. Of course, if you're a developer in a different country, this fixed fee will change. What's different about this rate? What's different is Google will automatically apply the lowest fees for every transaction. We're not going to force you to pick whether you're a microtransaction developer or a large transaction developer. We'll just figure it out, and we'll apply the lowest transaction. The second thing is we're not going to have any volume restrictions. Right from your first transaction, we'll give you the lowest fee. Okay? Brian, how does that sound to you?
I'll tell you that my CFO is going to be happy about that.
Yeah, indeed. And the commitment that Google Wallet has to all you developers is that we're committed to increasing your bottom line. For Google, we want to make sure that you have the best rate and you don't have to think about whether it's small transactions or larger transactions. And the best thing is that as of Joel and Dan, what was it, 3 p.m.?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. This has just gone live to all existing in-app payments developers. Okay? So if you're Google Wallet for digital goods and you're using it today, you've done this integration, everyone's got this price automatically. And if you integrate tomorrow or you try it out in the code lab at 1:15 on Friday, we'll just give it to you automatically. So starting from this point on, this price is live. So I want to wrap up and cover what we talked about today. The first thing is Google Wallet is optimized for digital content. Doesn't matter what kind of digital content. You don't have to have an app. It doesn't have to be in-game currency. It could be in-game currency and in-app payments. It could be digital content like music that you're selling, or it could be Joel's Pug blog. Whatever it is, you can monetize using Google Wallet. The second thing is that our integration is really simple. It's as simple as a few hours. Of course, if you're Dan and Joel, it only takes you 10 minutes, right? The third is we announced earlier that we'll support both single item purchases and subscription purchases. This is already live in Sandbox. You can go try it out right now. Right? The fifth thing I want to talk about is how can you increase your bottom line, right? That new pricing that we showed you is a huge step towards increasing your bottom line. Other thing, of course, is that conversions matter more than everything else. And with our streamlined flow and streamlined sign up, you should have amazing conversion with Google Wallet. So in terms of next steps, I just want to cover a quick few next steps. First, we have a code lab on Friday at 1:15. Do make sure you stop by, and we can even show you how to integrate with new subscriptions right away. We've given a set of links to developer documentation, creating an account, and you can also follow us on our blog. And of course, if you want to go back over the slide deck, we've given a link to that too. Before I wrap up and invite over Dan, Joel, and Brian for questions, I want to just send out a big thank you to all you developers from Google Wallet. The reason for us building these products is so you guys can use it. So thank you for your support, and we hope with today's announcement, you can monetize your digital content much, much better and increase your bottom line while doing it. Okay. Guys, do you want to come over? And of course, in true Google I/O form, this entire presentation was built in HTML and Impress.js, so huge thank you to the guys who built this and open sourced it. And of course, we use some of the cool pictures that are out there on Flickr with the Creative Commons license.
We should try to stay close to each other.
Okay, so with that, if you have any questions, we're all happy to answer them. Thank you. Yeah.
Question over here. If you're going to look into international markets, the tax ramifications on these charges, how are they determined? How do you know?
How do we determine?
For instance, say you do a transaction in France. Obviously, there's some amount of money from a tax perspective that has to be remitted back to France or the EU or wherever. How do you have any notification, or how do you actually determine that amount?
Okay, so there are two kinds of taxes, right? So one is the tax that the user pays, so the buyer pays, and the tax that the developer then has to pay, the same amount. So on the buyer side, it's really, really simple. We use tax tables that are provided by both the developer on our merchant center and determine where the location of the buyer is. So when they sign up for Google Wallet, they have to provide us their instrument and their billing address. So we use that to determine what the taxes are. And of course, all developers can go into our merchant center, look at every order, determine what the tax ramifications of those are, and then appropriately complete their taxes. Thank you. Please.
Oh, what do you recommend for a three-party transaction? Like, I use the PayPal API, and it allows me to take a cut, pay the event director most of it, and the credit card payment happens once. Do you have any help for that?
Yeah, so great question. So what you're looking for is, how do I like partition and do a rev share to a third party? With our current integration, we've tried to keep it really, really simple. And part of that simplicity is that today we don't allow you to rev share to a third party. However, this is something that we're actively looking at. So stay tuned into our blog, and you might see some exciting announcements come up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please.
Hi. So you mentioned in the demo, showed off in the demo rather, the seller information that you put in. You just use the email in your example. What extra metadata is available for those transactions? Obviously, if I miss that callback that's made by Google Wallet for whatever reason, I'm going to have some kind of backup that runs on a scheduled basis. What can I get those transactions back through the API in order to make sure that my records are correct?
Go ahead.
So if you were to miss a postback, there was that one important step that I mentioned, that writing out the order ID into the response. If that actually fails, then we would actually terminate or cancel the order. And you can reconcile that in the Merchant Center. Anything else?
No, I think that's
Any kind of sort of general transaction data, if I want to run my own analytics, for example, or I lose my data for whatever reason and I want to recreate my database?
So all the transaction information is in Merchant Center. You can pull some reports off Merchant Center and then do the reconciliation kind of in an offline process.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you can definitely do that on the Merchant Center site. And if you want to dive in further, you can just stop by like one of our booths or in the Code Lab on Friday, 1:15, and we'll be happy to like work through some of the ideas with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, a quick question about the user interface. Does it automatically detect the mobile browsers and it launches the Play application, or?
It's only what we're showing you right now is a web-based UI. It will detect if you're on a desktop web interface or a mobile web interface and show you the appropriate flow. It does not kick over to Google Play.
Any other questions? Okay. Nothing else? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed having you guys here.